And there we are. We're live. Welcome everybody. I already see there's 30 people lined up. That's really nice. The Shade community is there. Round two, Cryptocito or Shadecito. Last time we talked, at least here on the channel, was actually over a year ago, January 11th, 2022. Insane how time passed.
Yeah.
Since then, we obviously went through a lot in crypto. It's been a rough 2022. First quarter of 2023 was relatively okay, but I think people are still like traumatized, PTSD and everything. So first of all, great to have you back on the channel. How is that year been for you? How are you? Also, right now, and we're going to talk a lot about Silk, Shade Swap. There's a lot going on your end, but just in general, how has your year been, and how are you? How is everything?
I think it's really interesting that the last time we talked was in January of 2022, because I think that was like kind of the peak. It really was the peak of optimism, the peak of the bull. And in Cosmos specifically, because it was pre-UST collapse, pre-FTX. And I think it's a huge wake-up call to see like who's still building, who's excited about Cosmos, who's excited about IBC, who still gets the vision even after how difficult 2022 was and 2023 was. And for me, I'm incredibly encouraged because we're still seeing progress. There's so much to celebrate on the liquid staking derivative front, the advancements in terms of shared security, all the potential use cases of IBC that everyone dreamed about. Remember cross-chain smart contracts, that thing at the end of 2021, 2022 that people were like, well, hypothetically. And now suddenly we have, the squids of the world. So like, there is so much to celebrate, and Shade's a part of that story. We're a team that we had to overcome a lot of adversity, but we're still here. We're still building, and it's exciting. What's exciting is to see communities become stronger through the adversity, because when liquidity starts to flow again and people start to come back and want to learn about Cosmos, like we've sprinted ahead. It's always in the bears when the building continues the most.
Yeah, I think it's a very good intro, and like love the positive vibes. And I think especially now, like a lot of people, I get a lot of messages. They're obviously frustrated because prices are going down, which is totally understandable, right? Like even myself, like of course I want prices to go up, right? Like we're in crypto. I don't want to sit on a 70, 80, 90% loss. So I totally understand that, but I think it's very important, especially if you're just watching this live stream right now. And we have a core builder in Cosmos that's been around for years, like to really understand and listen to what he's saying, because there's much more than just price action on CoinGecko, right? There's lines of code that get refined, that get battle tested, that get improved behind the scenes throughout the past year and a half, right? So the product in that sense is just getting better, while the perceived value of it, that the market traded value, like goes down, right? And I think it's just a roller coaster to just be in that industry in the first place. But I think from your perspective as a builder, it must be on steroids, right? Because you deal with a lot more stuff as being a founder in that space. I think we lost Carter. Let me see if we can get him back. Can you hear him in the chat? Because I can't hear him anymore. Oh, he's back. He didn't fall asleep. Don't worry.
Oh,
there you go.
But I'm on a hotspot right now, so this might be some like quick get in, get out. Unfortunately, the Wi-Fi hotspot it's holding on for dear life. But I was gonna say that price doesn't reflect tenacity. It doesn't reflect the builders that like have to make a choice. Like, do you go and chase the next big L1? Do you go and chase the next big flashy narrative, or do you double down on the vision for interoperability? Do you double down on horizontal scalability? Do you double down on the principles of Cosmos? And that is what the opportunity of the bear market gives to builders, and it's not reflected in price. Tenacity is not always reflected in price. But what I can say is, on the other end of it, when people circle back and they see what's been built quietly, that quietness makes a lot of noise.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think since the past year, also like Cosmos itself as an ecosystem went through a lot, right? We have a lot of governance stuff and drama every now and then, but also a lot of innovation, right? Like you mentioned already, liquid staking, and we will talk about this later, because there's also a wild Stride implementation on ShadeSwap, also in combination with Silk, which is very exciting. But talk maybe from a Shade perspective. Since the past couple of months, and maybe since we talked last, like what have been some of the milestone achievements? Was there anything that you like overthought and said maybe we should drop that direction, turn another direction? Did you pivot on any of the ideas you had a year ago, or how has that been for you?
Sure. So the biggest pivot was originally Silk inherited some of the assumptions of the Terra model. The original Silk white paper actually stated in the opening abstract reservations about UST and where its floor value came from, which I actually had, ironically, multiple Terra people come up to me in person in New York and be like, "You don't know what you're talking about." So there's a little bit of irony in terms of the risks that eventually actualize, but we were inheriting some of the assumptions of the UST model, and so in March we fully pivoted to the over collateralized model. Like during the Terra collapse, we actually fully pivoted away from algorithmic, 100% back to over collateralization. Interestingly enough, we had actually had a team building the over collateralized model the entire time. So we actually had a team building an algo version of Silk and a team building an over collateralized version of Silk. So it actually didn't impact development too much. But that was the first big pivot. It's like algorithmic models, too much reliance on market makers, too much reliance on human factors, and like really within this programmatic environment, over collateralized models have proven, at least with our 5-6 year data set of MakerDAO, that they work. But separate from that pivot, it's really just been a race to build out all the key building blocks to make sure Silk can succeed. So we launched the first ever bonds product in Cosmos. So that's essentially like protocol owned liquidity, the ability for the DAO to acquire assets, and like essentially like the DAO holds Cosmos staking derivatives, Osmos staking derivatives. So the DAO is earning passive yield from securing these layer ones. Really cool products like that. We launched the largest secret network staking derivative. It accounts for more than 3% of all bonded secret, is actually in the form of a liquid staking derivative that Shade Protocol launched last year. We have a generalized IBC bridge interface. So most of you, when you interact with something like osmosis or Kajira, a lot like the bridging experience is generally speaking focused on you can deposit into the app and you can withdraw from the app. But we kind of looked at IBC and said, like, why not make a bridge interface where you can go anywhere to anywhere? So like on our app, you can bridge Atom to Osmosis. You can move stuff from Juno to Atom. Like it's a total generalized IBC bridge interface that launched in December. That was another huge milestone. And then 2 weeks ago, kind of the liquidity base for Silk was launched. We launched ShadeSwap, which has a derivative swap, a stable swap, and constant product. So it has 3 different curves. And then this last Wednesday, so it's been, oh man, time slows down. It's probably been like a week. Silk went live. So we fully kind of unleashed our 5 to 6 key DeFi primitives. And in early May, staking will be coming, and we'll also be unveiling the next huge product, which currently doesn't exist in Cosmos. And because it's a Cryptocito podcast, it's only fair to like tease it. It's called Shade X. And the world won't know what that means until May, but we're very excited to keep building out the key DeFi primitives within the Shade DeFi ecosystem.
I hope you know that May is next week, so they're gonna chase you down on that. But that's good to know. Yeah, I wanna talk with you about all that. But since you mentioned the UST collapse, obviously, I remember like back then we talked a lot about that. Also, I think Olympus DAO, which was the hottest thing back then, right? Which is crazy to think about. So maybe as a like result of that, and I think also like this regulatory crackdown we're seeing now on stablecoin specifically, what is your views now on like stablecoins as a whole? And you mentioned earlier like you entirely went away from this purely algorithmic model. So do you think algorithmic stablecoins are entirely dead? And what do you think is like necessary for stablecoins to sustain?
Sure. So, I mean, Terra fundamentally had a couple problems. The first one was that they were backing a stable coin with only one volatile asset. So Luna was the only backing for UST. They tried to get Bitcoin in there at the very end, but it was very late. So I think, generally speaking, a lesson that's been learned is if you're going to back something stable with a volatile asset, you probably need to diversify across a set of volatile assets or a set of stable assets. The second piece that UST kind of made a mistake on is that it wasn't over collateralized, right? So if you think about like in finance, you want your liabilities to match your assets. Terra, every UST represented a liability, as in it's a promise that you can sell it for $1 or redeem it for $1 worth of Luna. And fundamentally, there was a skew in the balance sheet as a protocol where there was way more liabilities than assets. At the point that happened, the system collapses. So what's the lesson you learn from that? You need to have more assets than liabilities, right? And like over collateralized models are like designed to try to kind of guarantee that model assumption. And then kind of the third piece that I think like on the regulatory front we're seeing is the governance token really shouldn't back the stable coin. And I think like from a compliance standpoint, I think this makes a lot of sense because from a regulator standpoint, they don't have a huge data set on stable coins. They saw this Terra collapse and they're going to want to try to like prevent it from happening again. Does that restrict how much innovation can occur on the algorithmic stablecoin front? Probably, definitely. Is it fair? Is that a fair thing that regulators are trying to protect against, the concept of a stablecoin only being backed by something that's kind of recursive and self-referential? I would say there's some wisdom to that. I'm not opposed to that. Industry kind of had its chance with algos, and we'll see if it keeps moving along. But I guess the last thing I'll say on the regulatory front is Silk is really uniquely positioned because it's not pegged to the US dollar. It's not pegged to the euro. It's actually pegged to a basket of global currencies and commodities. Bitcoin is included in this basket that it's tracking. Gold is included in this basket that it's tracking. So it's not claiming to be matching the sovereign currency. It's kind of in this really uniquely differentiated niche. There's going to be Forex markets that emerge from people speculating on the relationship between the US dollar and Silk's basket, the euro and Silk's basket. And we're excited because this is something that like a year and a half ago we predicted. When we designed Silk, it's capable of evolving its basket. The US dollar could get removed from Silk's target peg. The euro could get removed. The Bitcoin could gain another 50%. It's totally up to governance as the story of Silk evolves over time. Atom could be included in terms of what Silk is tracking. And that gives us a lot of regulatory flexibility that as frameworks actually emerge, Silk is very nimble. It can move. It can change. Whereas 99.9% of these other stablecoins, they're tracking the US dollar. And if something comes out that says like you can't do that, they're going to be in a really hard position purely from a mechanical standpoint. So anyways, that's kind of a summary of Terra, summary of Silk and its unique positioning with respect to regulations.
And I urge everybody, I'll drop the link here as well. And I think we can get right into Silk as we talk about it. The basket composition, let me actually drop the link right now here. Silk basket composition, because I think it's very interesting. I remember like we talked about this also a year ago on the last podcast. But so we're 7.4% Canadian dollar, 33.5% US dollar, 11% Japanese yen, 6% Bitcoin, 23% euro, and 18% gold. So that's a very interesting composition. Like, can you explain why exactly, like how that came together? And also like, is that a dynamic composition or how does that work? Can it adjust? Like, let's say Japanese yen goes to zero, which could happen, or Canadian dollar, or even US dollar, whatever. And there's a more favorable asset out there. Like, could that be added, and how could that be adjusted, if at all?
Sure. So Silk's original ideation was something that I came up with, and originally we wanted to create a basket that reflected kind of GDP, right? Actual like productivity. Could we create something that's an aggregate of all the world's productivity and trying to like match that onto a stable coin? Eventually, though, the complexity of this reached a point where we actually opened up a part 1 research grant. So we had a researcher that's very embedded into the Forex markets and essentially spent like 3.
I think we lost him again. Yep. He's gonna be back. 1 second. He's having Wi-Fi issues. I think he's gonna be back any seconds. But yeah, at the meantime, just going through the chat. I think everybody, like, you should definitely go check out the link that I shared, because it's definitely interesting. I'm gonna see all your questions, SECs on him. I don't think yet. I think the SEC is in trouble themselves right now. But yeah. Thank you, Brahma. Hit the like button. Really appreciate that. You should really do that. Means a lot. Somebody got to make a tweet to get Carter back. We lost him. I think it's actually the first time that somebody dropped out in my stream. So you guys have to entertain me now in the chat until he gets back. Ask about the non-Cosmos project. Give me a minute to compound. Yep. Good rocked by Carter. Yeah. What are you compounding, chat? We have to know. Okay, he's saying he's working on it. He's getting wrecked by the internet, I think. I don't know what VSCRT is, but we can ask him because he's back.
I apologize for the stability problems here. If I drop again, we're gonna snag one of our developers to hop on with a more stable connection. So my sincerest apologies to the audience. I am in a
They were already
on a family vacay, so it's unfortunate.
They were speculating. The SEC's on you. You rugged me. You froze. But you're back. That's what counts. But you're on your phone now, right? I think, can you turn it? Maybe we can get you on the full.
Oh,
yeah, there we go. Much
maybe.
better, yes.
Oh my god.
Yeah, you just gotta sit there now and hold it the whole time.
I know. This will be the arm workout for the day.
Hold it still. But yeah, we're talking about Silk, the basket allocation, and yeah.
So we had the part 1 of the research grant, kind of a Forex expert, but then we uncovered a problem, and it's actually a problem that a lot of protocols struggle with in Cosmos, which is the data that we needed wasn't available with Cosmos oracles. So it was actually 25 plus currencies that we wanted a part of the basket originally, and actually Band Protocol didn't support these. Oho from Umi as an oracle solution wasn't up and running yet. I know Agoric is also working on an oracle solution too, and theirs wasn't live yet. So at the time, we were kind of forced to reevaluate of like, we had this hypothetical basket we really wanted to make, but in terms of implementation, the data feeds weren't available. So we issued another grant to this researcher, which was part 2, and their job was to simplify it down to the 6 assets, which is Bitcoin, gold, US dollar, Canadian dollar, yen, and euro. And they did, and it was beautiful. It actually improved the basket, and it made back testing a lot simpler because there wasn't 25 data sources we had to use. There was only 6. But in the future, governance can vote to add assets to what's being tracked for Silk's peg slowly over time. They can also remove assets, and they can also modify the weights. So it has complete flexibility to evolve, and it's a really beautiful system in that sense, because you get inflation resistance with Bitcoin and gold, but you also get volatility resistance because these sovereign currencies still do provide like a good amount of stability in terms of price movement. And people don't realize it, but like when you're holding the US dollar, you're technically in a speculative position. You're holding the US dollar and the relationship of the dollar to every other currency out there, all the commodities out there. It's constantly changing, and there's actually a degree of volatility. So what if you could hold something that was an ETF of stable assets, right? Instead of trusting just the dollar or just the euro, it's kind of like when you invest in the stock market. You can invest in one stock, or you can invest in the S&P 500. And so we wanted to make essentially an ETF of global stability while adding privacy, while adding the promise of over collateralization. And that's what Silk is. It's a Bitcoin solve for scarcity, but we really believe that Silk solves for like true stability.
So I think just to be clear, like Silk is pegged to these assets, right? And the way you mint it is by a variety of assets. I think also you can mint it with ST Atom. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. ST Atom is like the most popular decentralized asset so far for the basket.
So can you talk us through the process of the minting? And I don't know, are there any caps currently? Because I think that was also one of the things that Agoric with IST had, that they have very like low caps. So I think that's why I also didn't really gain a lot of traction yet. But yeah, maybe how it works. And also like, you know, as some people might be familiar with IST, how does it differentiate? And yeah, what are some of the tweaks and differences there?
100%. So the caps are being moved, are kind of expanding as the market shows demand for a specific vault. So the ST Atom vault is the most popular vault right now. I think in terms of like Cosmos assets, Silk is technically like 50% backed by ST Atom right now, which is super cool. Atom, the strong Cosmos asset with great liquidity, and people are excited to lock up ST Atom, which is passively earning them staking yield, and then mint out Silk. And what a lot of people are doing with that minted Silk is they're actually selling it for ST Atom on Shadeswap. So they're essentially doing leveraged Cosmos staking, which is a really cool feature that we're going to be seeing more and more of as liquid staking derivatives emerge. And so, yeah, I think the biggest difference from IST is tracking the US dollar versus Silk is tracking a basket of global currencies and commodities. And we really view Cosmos stablecoins as something that should work together to help deepen out liquidity. Like Cosmos needs more liquidity in general. It really shouldn't be PvP. There's like so much money in EVM ecosystems, and it's our job collectively as decentralized stablecoins and projects in Cosmos to actually team up collaboratively, deepen liquidity, and pull in new users and new folks into the Cosmos ecosystem. And it's part of the reason why we actually partnered with IST. There's a Silk IST pool where if you liquidity provide on it, you earn BLD, which is the governance token of Agoric, and you'll also earn Shade, which is the governance token of Shade. We also teamed up with Comdex. So CMST is another dollar stable coin. And the Silk CMST pool, you earn Harbor rewards and you earn Shade rewards. So we want to be a focal point for Cosmos decentralized stablecoin liquidity. And the reason Silk is really well positioned to do that is we're not really competing for being the largest US dollar stablecoin in the Cosmos. That's not our prerogative. That's not our goal. That's not our target. Our goal is to provide a unique alternative for people interested in being hedged against the US dollar. And we also want to be, with Shadeswap, a focal point for the trading activity between the various decentralized stablecoins that emerge.
Yeah, I think especially after last year, the UST collapse and the crackdown on stablecoins, I think it's good to hear the the collaborative spirit also with other projects, because I think in the end of the day, what's healthy is to have a variety of stable assets, right? And all different shapes and forms. And I think it's just cool to see. Does Silk? So can you talk a little bit about the privacy aspect? Because I think when we last talked, we talked much more about secrets, also like the secret network ecosystem. We talked about privacy, private smart contracts, and all these kind of things. So yeah, what role does privacy play for Silk?
100%. So we personally believe that privacy is extremely important in DeFi. If you want to onboard institutions over the long haul, there's going to be two things they really care about. They're going to care about front-running resistance, where like if I make a really big trade in the open market, I want to ensure that I'm not bleeding a huge amount of value on a totally public ledger when it comes to trading. And so Secret Network with ShadeSwap, we inherit front-running resistance because these compute transactions are encrypted. The second piece is like trading strategies. Trading strategies on Ethereum are totally publicly visible, so people can copycat these very large traders and essentially take alpha away from these people that have like very differentiated investment theories, but because it's totally public, it's hard for them to like express that in a way where they can be very differentiated. So that's like on the institutional side. On the commerce side, crypto originally promised peer-to-peer transactions, but right now, because of the totally transparent nature of the majority of blockchains, like if I went to the store and tried to buy something with Bitcoin, if the person on the other end is savvy enough, they could see every single Bitcoin transaction I made since the beginning of time, and they can know how much crypto I'm holding. And that's like a massive security risk. So we've always held an opinion that for commerce to truly bridge to crypto, there's going to have to be some degree of privacy in order to actually have peer-to-peer transactions and not re-centralize kind of the commerce solution. So we're very excited with Silk to, it's only been a week, but to begin to onboard it onto off-ramps and on-ramps, as well as over the long haul have Silk directly integrate into commerce itself. And we believe that regulators over time are going to actually understand, like current commerce in Web 2 has more privacy than Web 3 does. And so for us, we're kind of front-running that story, front-running the kind of necessity for businesses to have privacy when they pay out their salaries, when they sell their products, the contracts they have with other folks. Like you need some degree of financial privacy, and we believe Silk is part of delivering the actual means of performing commerce between multiple parties. And we think Secret Network is well positioned to be kind of a scalable solution to the privacy commerce problem.
Like I personally think, and I talked with you about this a year ago. I had three streams also with the secret team over the past year and a half or something. I'm an advocate of privacy. I wouldn't say like I'm the biggest privacy guy, and like I'm also not the biggest NFT guy and all these kind of things. But I think there's going to be a point, with all this censorship we're seeing also on social media, right? People getting deplatformed, financial exclusion, all these kind of things. I think there is going to be a privacy season at some point where the need for it is so big. One thing though, why I believe it hasn't really taken off yet, like this whole narrative, I guess, in crypto, is because of the UX, right? Because you have this extra layer of privacy, which everybody wants, but most people are not really comfortable enough, like, taking that extra step and like clicking another couple buttons. So what is your view on that, and like how UX in, as a private by default smart contract platform and application, how that could be fixed?
100%. So first off, I'll say I completely agree with you. I've always viewed the privacy season as being locked behind two things. The first one is the fact that privacy today has only been focused on transactional privacy, like someone moving money from A to B, when I think there's a huge amount of demand for DeFi products to have privacy integrated in. Like I want to be able to use a lending product where my liquidation price point is private. I want to be able to use a decentralized exchange where I'm totally front-running resistant. So I think like Shade's the most, I can say this pretty confidently, it's the most advanced private DeFi suite in crypto right now. Like no one else has a stablecoin, a lending product, a decentralized exchange with like any meaningful liquidity, in my opinion, on this privacy front. So it is truly revolutionary. But to your point, if the UI UX has too much friction, you're going to struggle to onboard people. And when you struggle to onboard people, there's not going to be as much volume. If there's not as much volume, then the liquidity is not going to come. And so you end up kind of like spiraling into the market getting like just staying very, very small when it could be way more significant. And so our solution to that has been an obsession with UI UX. We have multiple UI UX designers. We have a front end team that thinks about how to overcome this friction every day. And so I would invite folks, like look up app.shadeprotocol.io and tell me how much additional friction you feel like you experienced on the IBC bridge interface, on the decentralized exchange, on the lending product. Odds are, I would say that it's an extra anywhere from like 15 to 20% friction But I would say a year ago, if you were using secret DeFi products, it would have been closer to 60 to 70%. It's a pretty seamless experience now, and that's 100% due to some very determined front-end developers and designers. And I think over the next 2-3 years, we're only going to continue to see that improve, where our end state is that users can have privacy without even feeling the extra friction. We're not there yet. We got a long ways to go, but we have come a very long ways from 2021 and 2022.
Yeah, I must say I haven't used everything yet, but I've spent some time, navigating through the tabs, and it's really clean. Like you have everything at one spot, right? I think from that, it's clear that this is easy. But I think also when just that additional like the privacy aspect, that there's this viewing key and you have to like make this additional transaction and everything. I think that also keeps a lot of people away from using it, because it's just another layer of effort that they have to put in. But I think it's a good idea to like invite people to like play around with the app, with the platform. There's many apps on there. You can swap, you can bridge, like I said. There's an IBC integration. You can borrow and buy Silk there. There's bonds. There's derivatives. You can check your portfolio. You can wrap. And also there's an airdrop tab, which you might want to check out. But yeah, I think that's cool. I also want to ask you about Shadeswap in a second, but let's talk a little bit about the relation to secret network and what's been going on the secret network ecosystem, and also maybe for those that are completely new now and haven't heard about Shadeswap, like how is it built? What's the relation to secret? And yeah, how is it like technically architectured in like simple terms?
Sure. So we'll talk about the relationship to secret network. We'll talk about Secret Surge, because there's this massive DeFi campaign kicked off by Secret Labs, $4 million worth of LP incentives over the course of the next year or two. That's super exciting. We'll talk about Shade Protocol's relationship to Secret Surge in a bit. But to talk about like what makes Shadeswap differentiated. The first piece is its focus on the relationship between L1 tokens and staking derivatives. So we actually spent 5 months last year with a PhD mathematician working on something called asymmetric concentrated liquidity. And it essentially allows for incredibly efficient trades between Atom to ST Atom, Osmo to ST Osmo on very low liquidity. So you can go ahead and simulate a trade on one of those pools, and you'll see that you can get an incredibly efficient trade. So we're seeing a lot of interest on the derivative curve and how efficient it is. The second piece is we put derivatives front and center. So whenever we can use derivatives, we do, because it's more efficient for LP providers. It's more efficient for the protocol, because the protocol has to spend less incentives to attract liquidity. So we're definitely a derivative focused DEX. And then the third piece of the puzzle is that Silk over time is becoming the essentially key routed liquidity. So on like Osmosis as a good example, to kind of be a liquidity provider where most of the rewards are, you have to hold Osmo. But this type of model forces liquidity providers to take on impermanence loss because of the volatility of like this kind of governance token model. And so what we decided to do is put a stablecoin as the center router of liquidity. And this makes it so that liquidity providers don't have to take on as much risk of impermanence loss when Silk is kind of the centerpiece of routing. So in summary, you get multiple revenue streams as a liquidity provider because of the focus on staking derivatives. We have an incredibly efficient derivative trading curve that's totally unique with asymmetric concentrated liquidity. And the third piece, having a stablecoin as the key router, is also differentiated from most of the other Cosmos DEXs. And then you also get front running resistance because we have this privacy built in. You're trading private tokens, your balances are kept protected, and you don't have to worry about people extracting value from your trades. And now the relationship between Shadeswap and Secret Network, I would say, of course, we inherit the privacy properties of Secret Network. This gives us those encryption features. And Secret Surge was something that was recently passed on chain. It was a massive incentives program to revitalize secret DeFi. And so there's secret incentives right now that you can farm on the Silk USDC pair, the Silk USDT pair, Silk to staked secret pair. And yes, V-Secret are the incentives Mohammed just commented on here. And this comes from the Secret Surge initiative. So we're super, super thankful for the Secret community to rebuild TVL on Secret Network and to kind of show the broader cosmos that there's a lot going on here. And one thing specifically that's on my heart is like we're focused on supporting like Atom liquidity. We actually really value the hub and the role of Atom within the larger ecosystem, and it's why Silk ST Atom is like the largest pair on ShadeSwap right now. Is we think that if we can bring Cosmos liquidity onto Secret, it's really going to help revitalize this ecosystem that we're building out.
Yeah, I think you also had spaces with the Stride team, right? So what's up with them? Like, are you also planning to bring on more liquid staked assets or?
Yes, so Stride right now, there's Stride incentives on the Silk ST Atom pair. So for anyone that's a huge fan of Shade and Stride and you want to farm, that's like a really, really good pair to get in on. We have a really unique relationship with Stride just because they had been talking with us since last year. We've met their team in person. We think they're awesome, awesome builders. And what Stride's done remarkably well is they're just launching staking derivative after staking derivative after staking derivative. And so for ShadeSwap, as we expand the offering of available Cosmos assets, we'll definitely be continue to onboard Stride liquid staking derivatives because we love their approach to security, modularity, their approach to IBC, and their relationship to the hub with shared security definitely gives us a lot of peace of mind about the security of that layer one. So as a whole, Stride's also a really big fan of us because we're prioritizing liquidity on their staking derivatives. That being said, the derivative curve is super efficient, and so other liquid staking derivatives are excited to kind of leverage asymmetric concentrated liquidity. So Quicksilver will be coming to ShadeSwap. Persistence with their staking derivative will be coming to ShadeSwap. So you can expect ShadeSwap to be, if you're interested in swapping between derivatives, if you're interested in just like LSDs and their role in Cosmos DeFi, ShadeSwap will be the place to go for making those trades and liquidity providing it. One thing I said back in last year, I believe it was September 2022, I predicted that there would be a liquid staking renaissance. I said that Cosmos DeFi was going to get absolutely ignited and it was going to essentially like explode in terms of volume and liquidity, and it was going to be on the back of liquid staking derivatives in 2023. I actually made a prediction that there'll be more volume with liquid staking derivatives by the end of 2023 than normal underlying L1 tokens. That prediction still stands true, and we're actually seeing it unfold in real time, in my opinion. So stay tuned for that thesis, and I'm excited to see it play out.
Yeah, and I think especially in Cosmos, we have this wave of innovation when it comes to liquid staking, right? We have multiple providers, like you mentioned, Stride, P-Stake, Quicksilver, Lido eventually, Staffy is also there, but also innovation in terms of technical features like the liquid staking module that is coming to the Cosmos Hub. And for everybody that's interested to learn more about that, well, first of all, I think watch or re-listen to your spaces that you guys did with Stride. And I just actually came off of a spaces with the Stride team as well and with the Cosmos Hub account on Twitter. So I'm really also like bullish on that. And I think the thing about Cosmos is like, because there's so much to like learn from other ecosystems, especially from Ethereum, obviously, things are being done more with caution, right? And I think liquid staking has always been a little bit like people have been scared that it's coming in Cosmos, but now it's here and people kind of enjoy it, right? And I think there's also a lot of risk mitigation implementations and caps and all these kind of things. So yeah, I'm definitely bullish on that. But if I look at Shade, you mentioned the Silk ST Atom pool is the biggest one, right? I'm just on it, like 1 million in liquidity, and that's within what, 2 weeks?
Yeah, well, Silk only went live on Wednesday, so it's been less than a week.
Oh wow.
Yep.
So there's a Silk ST Atom pool, and it says 61.8% APY. So I guess the rewards are in STRD, as you said, the Stride token, and SHD, right? The native token of Shade. Okay.
Yes.
And does it
another really good one is the Atom ST Atom pool. Once again, I highly encourage anyone, go simulate a trade between Atom to ST Atom and look at the efficiency and then look how much TVL is in the pool. It's actually been reported to us that there's actually more efficient trades on around 400K of TVL on ShadeSwap than on Osmosis with like the 23 million in liquidity, because of how
That's
concentrated it is. And one thing that's been told to us too is that osmosis is actually trading at tighter trading ranges from the L1 to staking derivative because arbitrage is happening between shade swap and osmosis. So osmosis, there's actually like a really interesting symbiotic relationship where the trading experience on osmosis is being improved because of the efficiency on shade swap. And that's only possible because of the power of IBC, because arbors are able to seamlessly go back and forth between the two dexes. And so a lot of the volume on shade swap is tied to people making a trade in osmosis, and then arbor is going back and forth between this efficient curve as well as osmosis, which I think is super cool.
Can you also do single side deposits or?
Yes. So this is the SSLP feature, as we call it, is really just a UI UX simplification where you can come in with one asset and we'll automatically split it 50-50 for you. And we'll actually give you a refund to ensure that you don't, essentially you have like a slippage max, right? And so the system will only 50-50 LP provide for you up until you hit like that slippage cap. So yeah, we really wanted to make SSLP front and center. Some other dexes out there kind of hide it as like a power user feature, but realistically, it's something that we should like really advertise to be like, hey, you don't need to deal with the complexity of 2 tokens. Just bring your 1 token. The smart contract will handle it for you. And then on your way out, when you withdraw, you can also go back to just 1 token instead of having to like manage the 50-50 split and all that.
Yeah, agree. And then the VSCRT, which is this incentive, that's part of the secret search program that was like provided to Bootstrap, or?
Yes.
And where can I earn this? Which pool do I get that one?
Yes. So vSecret is on 5 pools right now. It's on the Shade to Stake Secret pool. It's on the Silk to USDC pool, Silk to USDT pool. And then let's see here. What are the other 2 pools? Oh, Stake Secret to Secret. That's that derivative curve. That pool also has vSecret incentives. And then Silk to Stake Secret is the 5th one. So 5 pools that you can farm vSecret on. And then vSecret, if you go to the bonds page, you can turn that vSecret in for Stake Secret, the staking derivative on Secret Network. So that's, you actually earn your rewards in the form of a staking derivative through the bonds product. So that's leveraging the bonds product in a really unique way. And yeah, we're just excited. Hopefully this shows people the power of like this multi-product integration all under one governance token, all the fee streams tied to the one token.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And talk about the airdrop, because I think last time it wasn't live yet when we talked. Yeah. But now it's here. I think there's like several missions you have to do, right?
Yes.
So how does that work?
So we had the first airdrop February 21st, 2022. And then the second airdrop came in October, which was when the bonds product launched. There was an additional 10% unlocked. And the final 70%, the final unlock, is coming in early May with the launch of Shade staking. Another really cool part of kind of this big moment is that D-Shade will be coming shortly afterwards, which is the staking derivative version of Shade as a token, which is really cool. And yeah, for anyone that, if you're an Atom Whale or an OG Luna Whale pre-collapse, if you staked, you were staking from November 7th of 2021 to December 13th of 2021, you're still eligible for the Shade airdrop. And our community has jokingly said it's the longest airdrop in human history. Like, it really has been very slow to unlock. So we're excited to finally get the final 70% out in May, and it's just been how the building has unfolded, and excited to get that out to the community.
I think it's between you, Omniflix, and Passage. Like, those are 3 airdrops. Like, where the products are live, like Omniflix and Passage Chain are live, but we're still waiting for the airdrop.
Yep.
But so you said early May, and right now you can claim up to 30% of the airdrop, right? So does it mean when staking goes live, you can claim 70%, or?
Yep, the full 70. We actually originally had tasks tied to Shade Blend and Shade Swap, but the kind of globally distributed engineers, when it was added in there in the final like month leading up, and then for security reasons, there was enough complexity tied to it that the code actually got removed. So it was literally put in and then taken out, just because we felt security wise it didn't have like the proper time. And staking as a task is like the most simple airdrop to kind of set up. So that is what the final 70% was tied to, and it was It was literally a security decision. We really wanted to get it out there, but soon, very, very soon.
But how does staking work on Shade, right? Because Shade is not its own chain, right? It's built on secret. So how does staking work there?
So this is actually like a really interesting mental exercise to do. So if you're staking on a layer 1, essentially protects all of the distributed ledgers, right? So like you're ensuring that a 51% attack can't happen so that someone says Cito moved money to Carter, right? And right, and L1 is protecting everyone's wallets, everyone's ledgers. So app chain staking is protecting a single ledger. It's protecting essentially the ledger of the protocol where all the treasury is stored. So you still need, if you have governance and you're an app, you still need staking to protect against 51% attacks. The difference is you're just protecting one account instead of like all of the accounts. So that's why staking exists for Shade. And there'll also be really interesting governance over the various apps. So there's going to be something called assemblies, which are essentially different subsets of multi-sigs that community members will have regular occurring elections for. And then these individual assemblies will be able to essentially manage all the different DeFi primitives as they emerge. And we're trying to find like kind of a middle ground solution between someone going on chain and asking for $10 and $100 million worth of value needs to vote on it. It's like, well, that doesn't seem super reasonable, right? Like we need to be able to find some sort of kind of representative democracy across the different app primitives in a way that's efficiently able to manage the DAO. And then the third piece is Shade tokenomics is going to be unveiled in May. So in terms of fee streams to the DAO, it actually becomes very meaningful right now. There's interest fees, there's liquidation fees, there's borrowing fees, there's trading fees, which are actively being collected right now back to the DAO. Stake Secret, as a staking derivative launched by Shade, is also accruing fees back to the DAO. And then protocol-owned liquidity, we're earning trading fees on that. Protocol-owned staking, we're earning staking fees from securing osmosis, securing the Cosmos hub. So all these different fee streams are accruing back to the DAO, and the tokenomics is going to unveil what are the powerful mechanisms that are going to be put into place to create, positive feedback loops for Shade holders. And something we're very excited about with Shade X, which I mentioned earlier, is this concept which we call closing the loop. We believe that most standalone DeFi primitives are going to be really struggle to find sustainability. But if you can daisy chain together public goods, all pointing back to the same token, you can essentially improve UI UX, improve kind of the shared liquidity across all the primitives, and finally actually achieve zero emission sustainability. But you have to have all these public goods working together. And it's a concept that I guess once again, it's a Cito podcast, so I'll tease the terms here. I'm sure the marketing guys will be upset at me, but it's a concept that we call meta engine, and we'll be sharing more about that in May.
Getting FOMO, we're all getting FOMO in the bear market. you managed to get us all into FOMO. I really liked. I think I'm excited to see. Also, I was going to ask about the SHD, the Shade token. But sounds like there's a lot of value accrual back, and I think also like Stride and a lot of these other tokens that in liquid staking, they have really showcased that there can be native protocol revenue that's generating actual yield. So, but is SHD it's not inflationary, right? It doesn't have emissions, or does it? Or it has a max cap?
It has a cap of 10 million tokens. And the tokenomics kind of outline the 4 to 10 year plan. But no, Shade is not planned to be inflationary. There isn't some like staking with staking rewards into perpetuity. For us, this is a race to sustainability and closing the loop. Like I said, I think true sustainability comes when the protocol doesn't have to inflate its token to secure itself. It should come from genuine economic usage that generates fees, that attracts liquidity into perpetuity. And it's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult. I really think the closest we've seen to someone accomplishing this would be something like GMX, something like Frax. There's a couple of EVM projects that have peered behind the veil, in my opinion. I think Stride also is an example of like a truly sustainable DeFi project. And we're excited to be on the cutting edge of that with the Shade meta engine. and we'll see if we can pull it off. It's hard to pull off.
No, I think Sommelier is also an interesting one. I think they also have a lot of like native revenue, and also Atom itself, right? Like with this adoption of replicated security, the shared security version of the Cosmos Hub, Atom is generating revenue. Like that's really cool, right? On a multi-billion-dollar like in production network. So exciting times. But when I go on CoinGecko right now, I see SHD, as you said, 10 million supply, circulating supply 900,000. Is that correct, or?
Yes, that's correct. The CoinGecko feed is actually about to get updated because previously CoinGecko was pointing at Osmosis, Kajira, and then Sienna Swap. The Sienna Swap had the majority of the liquidity, but the API for that has gone down, and we actually migrated liquidity from Sienna to ShadeSwap. So it should be within the next couple days, CoinGecko will now be pointing to ShadeSwap, and so liquidity volume. I think CoinGecko shows like $1,000 in volume when there's been like over $100,000.
862.
Yeah. So there's been over $100,000 in volume on ShadeSwap, but like on CoinGecko, it looks like a dead coin, right? So that'll be fixed in the not too distant future once API stuff gets fully integrated into CoinGecko. And also, we'll be launching new pools in Osmosis and Kajira with the new SNP25 standard. So I'll do like a 10-second bit here. Secret Network migrated its standard from old SNP20s to something called SNP25s, which has like improved security and privacy. And we helped that little migrate tab on the Shade app is helping facilitate that token movement. And as a result, we have to update the pools to reflect the SNP25 standard on Osmosis and Kajira, which is kind of a mess, but we're working on it.
But the market cap is correct, though, right? Which is $6.1 million right now. And fully diluted, it would be then 62 million roughly. Can you talk a little bit about the distribution and like the rollout? I guess that's going to be part of the tokenomics unveil, but because now only 9% are in the market, right? So how are the other 91%, like, are they vested? What percentage of that is for the airdrop, and how is the rest going to be rolled out?
Yep. So 14.5% went to the airdrop. So the final 70% tied to that is going to unlock a really good portion of supply and help distribute the system in advance of governance. 14.5% was tied.
Okay, 40. Yes. Okay, 14. Okay.
Yeah, not 41. 14.5. And then there's already been 30% of that 14.5% tied to the airdrop. The thing is that the claim rate was lower than we were expecting. So it's around 50%, which is always an interesting part about airdrop. One thing we were really inspired by with Stride is how they continue to like re-airdrop to truly distribute the system. So we might be taking some notes from that, from unclaimed stuff. We'll see how what the community wants to do with that portion.
Please,
and then
I claimed all of mine, so please do that.
Nice. Yeah. maybe another airdrop to Adam. Who knows, right? Who knows? We'll see. And then I think it's around 29% was earmarked for staking and LP. That's just started going. So it was technically earmarked for year one, but without ShadeSwap being live in 2022, it was kind of a collective decision made within the DAO to not start emitting value in the bottom of the bear and without a product flywheel. Because then you're just incentivizing liquidity for like speculation, versus now that we've turned on LP incentives and we're about to turn on staking incentives, people are rolling up to a full product suite, right? This is like a rapidly becoming a mature application. So around 30% devoted to staking and LP. Another big chunk, I think it's like 10%ish, devoted to just like community pool and treasury. 12.3% devoted to the grants program, which was used very, very aggressively. So ShadeSwap was actually a grant team. ShadeLend and Silk was also a grant team. Stake Secret, the staking derivative, was also a grant team. There's also something called Silk Pay that was built out with the grant. The Curve that was research was a grant, and the Peg was also a grant. So we're very focused on like supporting builders and getting as many teams as possible, part of kind of the Shade family and Shade product suite. And then besides that, 7.75% was a private sale back at the end of 2021 to support the builders. A fun story about that is we said no to more fundraising because there was people that were trying to be like, you should sell 12% or 50% or 20%. But the kind of collective DAO said, nope, only 7.75%. We want to try to keep that ownership as low as possible on the VC side. So it's on the lower end of things compared to most VC distributions. And then the development fund is 23.25%, which is vested out over time. So that's hopefully that gives you a decent picture of the distribution.
I think we got a lot of product announcements, leaks, tokenomics reveal. Like we all got that already today, I feel.
I know it was a lot. We covered a lot of ground, even despite me glitching in and out. Hopefully the audience appreciated some of the alpha.
No, I mean, I also really appreciate the alpha. So thanks for doing that. Let's do some community questions for everybody that's in the audience. There was a question, I think we talked about this also last year. Ion, which is osmosis wild second token that never really had a use case. I think now they're also, I haven't heard from them in like a couple of months, but I think they also wanted to be this like multi-asset packed stablecoin, whatever. How does it differentiate? I don't know. What's your views on?
Yeah, Shade's much more. It's better to equate Shade to a token like Osmo. It would be the better comparison. Like Silk is the stable coin for the protocol. Shade is the governance token. We haven't launched like a secondary token like Ion. I think Ion's a super cool experiment. I've tracked all the Commonwealth forum posts about Ion. It's cool to see like potential indexes that are going to be built with Ion as backing. And I it's DeFi. It's great to have experiments. And so I'm definitely rooting for Ion to continue to develop into something cool.
Yeah, and if there's anybody in the audience and would like to see maybe in the future like a discussion or debate with Carter and maybe someone from Ion or even Sunny. I know back then like Sunny and you had a lot of like exchanges, like in a positive way, not like drama, but about designing decentralized stablecoins. So could be another good video, like good live stream, for people to learn, even for me to learn.
I would personally love that. I think concentrated liquidity coming to osmosis is like super exciting for the whole ecosystem. But I think there's also like alternative approaches, like asymmetric concentrated liquidity is like a never been done before in DeFi. And I think there was some tweets back and forth with some osmosis folks trying to figure out what it is. So yeah, I'd love a Cosmos DeFi debate or summit. I think is also super valuable for communities.
There's a question about API for borrowing, I guess.
Yes. So there's essentially there's two pieces. So there's the Silk earn pool, where you can essentially deposit Silk and earn on liquidations. So like as collateral gets liquidated from the lending positions on Shade Lend, your Silk gets turned into the protocol. The protocol burns it, and in return you get discounted asset. You get like ST Atom, USDC, USDT, etc. from liquidated vaults. So if that's what you're referencing, the APY for that's actually pretty high because not many people are in the earn pool right now. We're actually on our front end. The team's actually adding the APY for that like as we speak. So it's actually a pretty high priority. But it's good to note that Silk is not a lending and borrowing market yet. So it's not a money market where like you deposit Silk and then someone borrows your Silk from you. What it really is you're locking up collateral in a smart contract and minting it. You're borrowing against your own position. That being said, we would love for Silk to get integrated in money markets like Mars, like Umi, with whatever Kajira's got cooking up. There's like lots of different potentials for Silk to be integrated into lending and borrowing markets.
Yeah, it would be cool, like to have this ST Atom backed decentralized stablecoin across different Cosmos DeFi money markets. That makes sense. Lucas asking future use cases for Silk.
Well, there's something tied to ShadeX, but I can't share that. Separate from lending and borrowing market and ShadeX, I think the one I'm very excited about is Silk as a Forex instrument. So one thing in crypto and DeFi is like it's all US dollar oriented, but when we start to have these unique stable coins or index tokens that aren't tracking just the US dollar, there starts to be like a interesting relationship where people can hedge against the dollar or hedge against Silk, and there's kind of this back and forth volume and speculation on these indexes and how they're going to evolve. So we've always viewed Silk as this interoperability hub between global currencies, where we're going to have this very deep stablecoin market where people can trade from euros to dollars, and Silk is what they're going to be routing those trades through. So Silk as a Forex interoperability hub, and then also just like getting Silk integrated into like every DeFi product and into Web2 stores and getting I think one thing I said to you, Cryptocito, like a year ago was like, I won't rest until you can buy a coffee with Silk, right? Like that's like for me that is the end game when I can go over to Taiwan or Singapore or like somewhere and not in the US and buy something with Silk. That means we've actually achieved Silk as a currency. Silk is something that's meaningfully used in our everyday lives, because if crypto is only ever floating speculation money and it doesn't impact everyday lives, then we've failed to achieve the vision of what crypto could be.
I was gonna say later this year at Cosmoverse Istanbul, but unfortunately, crypto payments are illegal there, so maybe not. Maybe not there. Maybe somewhere else. Somebody said, Brian said he read your book recently. I think we talked about this last time, about the book you wrote a couple of years ago.
Wow.
Even
Thank
more
you for reading the book, Brian. It's always like a little emotional when you hear someone who actually like read it, because it's like it was a 3-year journey of like pouring my heart into that, and it's becoming a dated book, but I've had people come up to me at conferences with the book, and I've gone to sign it, and it's just like cool to hear that people read something and you poured your heart and soul into it and they found it valuable. So Brian, my challenge to you would be like spread that book, keep and teach and imbue the lessons of that book to as many people as possible. That's the best thing we can do, is continue to teach and educate others. That was my intro to the space. I started as an educator long before I became a builder, and that's ultimately like that's what I love to do. I love to teach people about this stuff. I love to educate people on the values and the attributes of blockchain, because that's why we're all here. I think a lot of people, they tend to degrade towards this kind of degen focus on money, but like at the end of the day, what got us here is the principles of blockchain and that it can actually be a force for good. And I hope I never lose track of that, and I hope anyone that reads that book can sense that that's what we should be passionate about as well, how crypto can be a force for good.
100% aligned on that. I think in Cosmos, like what I really like in that ecosystem is like there's a lot of like fundamentalists, right? Like a lot of people that have this vision, this alignment, that it's really about building products that also have product market fit, and also being smart about it, right? And not just throwing stuff out there and copy paste and try to sell it fast, right? So yeah, I really align with that. Maybe let's do one last question. UST Productions. In the Stride space, you said a non-Cosmos native project would incentivize their token in Shade. Which one? ETH, Avalanche? Tell us.
Yeah, it's EVM related. I can't give. This is one that I have to keep my mouth shut on. But I will say we're very excited about Gravity Bridge and Axelar and the ETH assets that are going to get bridged into the Cosmos ecosystem. There is so much potential if we can just prove to EVM chains that like the UI UX here and the liquidity and the efficiency is outpaces alternatives, and really looking forward to seeing EVM assets get fully embraced, fully adopted in Cosmos. I think it's going to open a lot of doors.
I think so too. Yeah, I think sometimes in Cosmos, we also have to recognize that like our ecosystem is still tiny, right, compared to Ethereum. So I think the Sommelier team, they're like working hard to like connect to the Ethereum world, but it's good to come from multiple fronts, so hope looking forward to see that. Yeah, man, this has been really cool. I think we can wrap it up here. It's been a very good chat with you. Also, thanks for all the alpha around ShadeX, around also the SHD token itself, potential airdrop lined up. I don't know, but yeah, really appreciate it. Any final words from your side?
I just want to say thank you to everyone that still believes in the vision of Cosmos, even at the low moments, and that my promise, at least from the Shade team and the Shade builders, is that we're going to continue to be relentless advocates for privacy, and that we believe that Silk can be an amazing force for good. And just want to, if you haven't already, check out app.shadeprotocol.io, join the community, be part of the discussions, and I predict that in 2024, Cosmos is gonna shock some people. We're in this interim phase with IBC, and I just think if you're listening to this, you're in a great place. And of course, Cito, thank you for being such a gracious host. Thank you always for your due diligence. Is always deeply appreciated. So thank you, everyone. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.
Yeah, man, really appreciate it. That was a great closing statement. Also, thanks everybody for the good questions and good engagement. Also, when Carter wrecked me for a few minutes, but that's all right. Cheers, everybody. Yeah, this was really cool. We'll do this again.
100%.